Hi, my name is Jessica Young. I am an OBGYN and an addiction medicine specialist, and I'm also the maternal medical director for the Tennessee Initiative for Perinatal Quality Care. We are here today with Amber, who is one of our patient advisors, and we are going to talk with her about medication-assisted treatment and her experience with that. Hi, Amber. Thanks for joining me today. I'm really excited to have you with us here today and hoping you might share a little of your recovery story with us and what role MAT or medication-assisted treatment played in that journey.
Yes. About 4 years ago, after the birth of my second son, I was having a lot of pain, and I've been to several doctors trying to figure that out, and they could never figure it out, so they prescribed me to prescription painkillers. I was prescribed 10 milligram oxycodone and 15 milligram Roxys. And I took them as prescribed for a very long time until there were some things that happened in my life that I couldn't deal with mentally, and I turned to the painkillers, and I was also prescribed Xanax at the time, and I started to abuse them. It didn't take long before things really spiraled out of control for me. I had lost custody of my first two children and found out that I was pregnant with my third child. I had seen several different doctors at that time, and they decided that the best course of action was to stay on the painkillers throughout the pregnancy. And I saw a high-risk doctor for that. We had talked and asked if, a Suboxone or methadone alternative would be best, and about 4 different doctors said, no, we're just going to keep you on the pain medicine throughout the pregnancy. So that's what we did, and there wasn't a whole lot of information about, how the child was going to be affected from the opioid use during pregnancy. And he was born May of 2017, and he was very healthy when he was born. But we were hit with like a whirlwind at the hospital because we didn't know what was going to take place if he did have withdrawal symptoms. They did end up doing like medication intervention. That was only for a couple of days. It wasn't even an entire day. But they reversed it off of him because he wasn't, he didn't really need it that much. Like, they didn't let us hold him, and they weren't doing low stimulation for the baby and his surroundings and things like that, which really made it a lot harder for him. But after they kind of like loosened up on that, we got him out of there. He was only in there for 10 days. But there was no warning to any of that. They were just like, through the pregnancy, they're like, this is going to be completely fine. And he was fine, and he is fine now, but it wasn't fine at the time.
Did they let you breastfeed?
They did, yes. And that was one thing, like, a lot of the doctors and the nurses would push it, but then I had the pediatric side of it saying, no, I shouldn't be breastfeeding him with the prescriptions that I was on. So it was very back and forth on the doctor's ends. After we came home from the hospital, they had switched my pain medicine back over to my regular OBGYN. And the OBGYN had only wrote me the pain medication for 6 weeks after I had Lennox. And I had been on them for about 2 years at the time. I had slowed down as far as like, I didn't abuse the medicine while I was pregnant with Lennox, like I did before. But after I had him, it started back right up again. After the 6 weeks, they quit writing me the medicine, didn't send me to a pain clinic or anything like that. And I was just working a part-time job at the time, so I began using harder drugs, and again, lost control of everything, lost everything, and I had gotten back my other son at the time. So it was basically just happening all over again. And then I found out I was pregnant with my 4th child. And at this time, I was basically living in my car. I didn't have any family or friends. I had nothing because of the drugs. Like that was it for me. And I didn't know I wanted to get help. I didn't know how to get help. I'd never sought help before for it. One of my friends that I worked with at the time, she said that her daughter, who was pregnant, had went to the emergency room and just told them everything, and they helped her from there to get clean for her and her baby. So I went to the local ER and told them everything. It was really, really difficult because I was just like going into the ER. I wasn't going into a rehab, like they didn't care at that time that, I had just had my last like dose of medicine. I don't want to call it that, but and I was like really starting to feel the withdrawals and everything. And the intake process was very difficult. I wanted to leave several times. It was probably like a good 18 hours into it before I finally even got back into the ER room. And then they had sent me over to the mental health division. And I was not even done getting booked in there yet when they called me back over to the emergency room. So went back over to the emergency room, stayed there for 3 days to treat an infection. And when I was done with that, they sent me back over to the mental department. And there, once I got out of that first little floor, I had talked to a doctor, and they were going to start the Suboxone or the Subutex, and they was going to wean me off of the Xanax. And for the first time in a long time, I thought that there might be a solution to this like never-ending cycle of, like getting back up again and just, falling back into the same thing of using. And the doctors there were pretty good. I was actually only there for about 11 days, but they started me on the Subutex, and I slept a whole lot. But they set me up from there. I had about a week's worth of the Subutex, and the plan was to take the Subutex throughout the pregnancy and try to prevent any withdrawing, because they said that for this baby, being on the Subutex was going to have a better outcome than the alternative. So after a week of being out or whatever, I went, that's when I met you, and went to your clinic. And that first day there was really hard too. It was just, it felt like so much to me at the time, but it ended up being, the best thing that ever happened to me. So I was there at about 20 weeks with my last child, all the way up until I had Levi.
When you were pregnant, what was your treatment for opioid use disorder like?
It was extremely helpful. Many times that I had tried to, quit before, I was extremely unsuccessful, and actually led to me using more when I would do that for some reason. during the pregnancy, I had the opportunity to start counseling and going to group meetings through the program, and it was a game changer for me. Like, for the first time in a long time, I had some kind of consistency, some kind of, outlet to talk to other people about the things that I was going through, and it was so life-changing for me. I kept going to the groups and getting a little bit of counseling on the side for the duration of my pregnancy. When we went to have Levi, or to have my fourth child, I had him with the understanding that things were going to be different as far as how they were going to handle his birth with me being on the Subutex, and I had a lot more understanding of what they were going to do, what they would do with me, and everything like that. He was only going to have to stay in there for 5 days for observation, whether to see if he was going to have any sort of issues. And luckily, he did not. It was pretty much night and day from the other, where my third child, he come out of it very quickly, but it was a difference from Levi. He was much more calm, and just having the environment and the people like knowing what to do when he was born helped him so much. Being able to hold him, to nurse him whenever I felt like he needed to be nursed, it was so much better than my previous experience. After Levi was born, I continued to stay with the program, and I have been clean for 2 years. And it's not only changed my life, but my children's lives, my family's lives. I've been able to earn back trust from a lot of people, the people that mattered. There was a lot of changes that I had to make in my life, and being on the medicine just provided me the time and the opportunity to get my life back together.
What role did buprenorphine, or Subutex is the brand name, what role did that play in your recovery, or has it played in your recovery overall?
For me, it was allowing me to be able to put the cravings and the just constant, need to get high to the side. The medicine, for me, it stopped those cravings and allowed me to build back. It gave me the foundation that I needed to go on with the rest of my life. Like, it allowed me to be able to have a future again, to be able to say, set goals. Those were things that I hadn't done in years, and it allowed me to be present with my children every single day, to play with them, and it just gave me my life back.
Can you tell me a little bit about what your experience was like when you initially started Subutex or buprenorphine, and how that changed over time during your pregnancy and then after delivery?
When I first started out, it was a lot more intensive than what it is now. I was required, but required to go to meetings every single week until I had been able to be confident in myself that I wasn't going to use, and to make sure that the doctor was comfortable with not thinking that I was going to use again. I went every week for a while, and then was pushed out to every 2 weeks, and then every 3 weeks, and eventually every month, which I am now. When I was pregnant, I was on the Subutex, and now after pregnancy, switched over to the Suboxone, and which is basically the same thing, but it has been a little bit more difficult for me in the beginning switching off of the Subutex. I don't think everyone experiences that, but I did, and it took a few months to work through, but I just went to a few more meetings and, had that accountability factor of it and worked through it, and here we are.
With every medication, there are pluses and minuses, pros and cons. For you, what has been the negative aspects of being on medication-assisted treatment?
For me, it is just, well, at first it was making it to the appointments, making it to the groups, and, just really making sure that I was engaging in the activities during these times. So transportation could be seen as one negative thing. The other thing is that a lot of people's families seem to have a problem, or not really have a problem, but they see it as changing one drug for another. And that's really, not what we're doing. And it's hard to explain that to a lot of people. There's just not a lot of information out there. And especially, for mothers, it's just looked down upon. And as long as you're willing to talk about it and you're open about it, it is easier for people to understand, but not everybody is.
There is quite a bit of stigma and discrimination against and targeted towards people with substance use disorder, including opioid use disorder. And for people with opioid use disorder, there's even more stigma around medication-assisted treatment. Commonly, we hear people say, oh, that's just substituting one drug for another. What are your thoughts about that? And what would you say to someone who says, oh, you're just substituting one drug for another? What's the difference?
It's completely different. It's not something that you crave. It's not something that you want to keep taking to numb the pain. I don't know if you could get high off of it if you tried, but you don't have those cravings. That's the biggest thing that I can stress, is the cravings are so much easier to deal with even when you do have them, that you're able to work through them and not get in your car and go find the nearest dealer. It allows you to look at your life for what it is every single day. And as long as you are, engaging in your treatment as a whole, you're not going to focus those negative feelings into using. You're going to turn around and be like, okay, what can I do to make this day better? And I don't know why it does that, but it is so different from an opioid. It takes a lot of it away. It just allows you to focus on the things that you need to get done, like getting your driver's license back, getting your children back. I know for so many mothers, it is a last resort, end of the road type deal where they're like, have lost everything and they're either facing death or jail. And this treatment is just so beneficial and can change anybody's life, I believe.
People that have opioid use disorder have both a physical and a psychological dependence to opioids. For people who are physically dependent on opioids, when they don't have them, they start having withdrawal and have physical symptoms related to not having that drug in their system. What were those physical withdrawal symptoms like for you, and how difficult did it make navigating the rest of your life when you were in withdrawal?
The physical withdrawal symptoms is what keeps people using, especially for me when I wanted to stop. I wanted to go back to my life and put it all down, and I couldn't because, 6-12 hours into it, you're feeling the aches and pains. Your stomach is in knots. You're sweating, feels like you have a fever. You can't do anything. You can't take care of your children. You can't go to work. You cannot function. And once you feel those withdrawals a few times really good, you'll do whatever it takes not to feel them anymore. And that means, using over and over and over again, dedicating your whole life on your phone to find the pills that you need or the drug that you need to keep you from being sick. That is all that it was at the end. I wasn't trying to get high. I was just trying not to be sick. And, a lot of people think that addicts want to be that way or choose it, but the physical withdrawal symptoms are, that's the key thing. And that's what this medicine does. It suppresses those, takes those down so that you can get your life back.
What advice would you give to someone struggling with opioid use disorder who's not in treatment yet and is maybe thinking about starting a treatment program?
My advice would be if you have tried rehab and you failed, if you have hit rock bottom and you have nowhere to turn, if you're just out of options, give the Suboxone a try. You owe it to yourself and to your baby to at least give it a shot. The medication assistance program is different from a lot of things out there. It could be the last thing that you have to try. If you stay in a positive mindset while using this medication, even if you stumble, if you fall, it's okay. You talk to your doctor, talk to your counselor, and you'll be able to find new ways and new tools to be able to deal with the cravings, to deal with relapsing, to deal with all of it. It's all there for you.
What kind of negative effects did the drug use have in your life?
I had lost my first two children, lost custody of my first two children. I had ended one relationship and had really nowhere to go and couldn't really get jobs or anything because of the drugs that I was on. And I had bounced around from job to job because I had begun abusing my medicine. So I would run out early every month and have to find it elsewhere. I had tried to get my own apartment, and that only lasted about a month after I lost my job, and my addiction had just really spiraled out of control.
What led you to finally getting treatment, and what changed in your life that made that a possibility?
My story started when I was prescribed prescription opiates. I had taken the pain medication as usual for a while, and when I started to have some things go on in my life that I couldn't deal with, I started to misuse the medicine, and I would come up short every month. And so I started to try to find more because I knew that I wasn't going to be okay without it. And it led to, harder and harder drug use. And it led to me losing my job, losing my kids, my house, everything. I had started to get a lot of that back, though, when I found out that I was pregnant with my third child. But once I had my third child, they only wrote me the pain medicine for 6 more weeks. And that was just a slap in the face for me, because here I am with this newborn baby, and I know that, I'm going to be sick if I don't have this medicine. So I began going back to what I knew how to do, which was find them elsewhere. And when I started the harder drugs, that's when everything would fall apart, and very quickly. And it was just like a cycle happened again. And I didn't try to seek help in a different way until I was pregnant with my 4th child. And when I found out that I was pregnant with him is when I was exhausted. I couldn't do it anymore. I wanted to get help but didn't know how. And that's when I was able to find the medication, the MAT.
From my perspective, the medication-assisted treatment allowed you the space and the energy and the time to do all that other hard work, because you did that hard work. The medicine didn't do that hard work.
Yes,
You did it.
that is, yes. I am healthier today mentally and physically, but more mentally than I was even before I started getting prescribed the opiates. I have been able to, especially like go into the groups, and they point out all these things to you that you would never think of on your own unless you're like seriously diving in and researching yourself, which you have kids, so you're not going to do that. And it's just there for you. And it has taught me different ways how to deal with my anxiety, how to deal with being able to go to sleep without the medicine. I took Xanax for different reasons too, but this mainly focuses on opioid use, but it has also given me tools to deal with all the other aspects of my life. If I hadn't gotten on board with the medication-assisted treatment, I would have ended up, I would be dead, or I would not have my children. And I couldn't imagine not having my life how it is now. And I mean, it was only, like 3 or 4 months, probably even less than that it took me to, lose everything each time. And I never want to think about what it could be like to not have chosen this path.
Amber, I hope that you are so proud of where you are now and all of the hard work and effort and dedication that you have brought to your own recovery. And I'm so grateful for you to being willing to share your story with us today. And so I really appreciate that.
Thank you. I'm just really have been honored to be able to share my story, and it's really been a nice breath of fresh air to my recovery.
Thank you so much for sharing.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen and learn more about medication-assisted treatment.